Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today. My name is Yasangi, and I'm here representing the sustainability team of Aitken Spence PLC, collaborating with Alpitia Plantations PLC to discuss a rather important topic: water security and biodiversity. Last Friday, on the 5th of June, we marked World Environment Day, and the theme for 2020 was celebrating biodiversity. Coincidentally, it was also Poson Day, a rather important day for Buddhists in Sri Lanka, because we mark the arrival of Buddhism in Sri Lanka over 2000 years ago on a day just like that. And for those of you who do not know, the king of Sri Lanka, King Devanampiya was on a hunt that day when he met Arhat Mahinda. And Arhat Mahinda told our king, "The beasts that roam the forest and the birds that fly the skies have the same right to this land as you. The land belongs to all living things, and you are not its owner, but only its guardian." Ladies and gentlemen, our history is marked with many examples of how infrastructure was developed to work with nature, keeping in mind the needs of people and all life. Sadly, like many things in our own history, we seem to have forgotten those values. And we're not the only ones who have taken the environment for granted in this world. Nearly 1 million species face extinction. The illegal wildlife trade is the fourth largest illegal trade crime in the world. Since 1990, 420 million hectares of forest, equal to 3 times the size of South Africa, have been lost. Speaking of South Africa, do you know that many people in South Africa are fighting the coronavirus with very little or no access to water? Can you even imagine that? Fighting the coronavirus with no water. So, yes, it's a timely topic to discuss, and we have with us today a panel of experts who will take us through some very interesting points. We will first have a look at the connection between water, biodiversity, and all ecosystems in the first presentation. Water equals life, trees equal water. Then we will have a look at the current water situation in Sri Lanka, followed by a session on the importance of harvesting rainwater, conserving and recharging. Last but definitely not the least, we will look at our individual responsibility towards water security and biodiversity. Each of these sessions will take 10 minutes so that we can have more time for questions from the audience to take the discussion forward. So without further ado, let me invite our first panelist, Dr. Ravi Fernando, who will take us through his presentation, Water Equals Life, Trees Equal Water. Dr. Ravi Fernando is a director on the board of Aitken Spence Plantation Management PLC and is also the chairman and CEO of Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited. He also serves as a board member on many platforms such as Habitat for Humanity and the UN Global Compact Sri Lanka Network. He has had an illustrious career of over 2 decades, serving S-suite and C-suite roles across regions. Author of the book Strategic Corporate Sustainability: 7 Imperatives for Sustainable Business, and a Blue Ocean Strategist with a sustainability mindset. Please welcome Dr. Ravi Fernando.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to talk to the Aitken Spence family about initiatives that have been initiated by Aitken Spence plantations. And it is quite obvious that if you're in the plantation business, the factors that are crucial to a good plantation business are obviously the land and the water. And today I want to emphasize the point that there is no life without water. We can live without most things, but we cannot live without water. And trees, the rain cycle is what really breaks the water down to us. So we cannot, if we keep deforesting, then we will not have water. Let's get to our first slide. So today I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about the Aitken Spence Plantations LPTA sustainability strategy and 3 pivotal points that we have focused on. And the 3 points are, we are focused on water, and that is UN Sustainable Development Goal number 6. We are focused on the whole area of life on land, because our business depends on the land, and that is UN SDG number 15. And last but not least, UN SDG 7, which is about renewable energy. Our entire LPTF plantation sustainability strategy hinges around these 3 key areas. So now I will talk a little about why we have chosen those 3 areas, especially the first and the second. Globally, it is important for us to realize that there's only 3% of fresh water available for 7.8 billion people on the planet. Now, that's more than enough if provided we use it properly. Now, most of that fresh water comes very much from forest cover and forests. And globally, it is sad to note that we have deforested almost 70% of the world's primary forests. But Sri Lanka has gone further, and we have deforested 84% of our primary forests. And this is a crisis that is going to pretty much come and hit us if we don't quickly correct this issue. So let's look at global water stress for a moment. Let's get to the next slide. So globally, according to some of the recent work that has been done by the United Nations Environmental Program, the basic prognosis is that by 2025, most nations in the southern hemisphere will be pretty much having great water stress and out of water. And what is important to remember is that about 70% of the world's population lives in the southern hemisphere nations. And when we look at nations like India, which are having a massive problem with almost 41% of India having massive water scarcity, which is next door to us, a lot of North Africa, and you can also see that a lot of Southeast Asian countries are having the same problem. So water scarcity is predicted to be a major issue in the future. So we cannot take this for granted. And this is why Aitken-Spence LPT sustainability strategy focused on water as one of the primary focuses for our entire strategy. And also conservation and forest cover, because without forest cover, we are not going to really pretty much have the water cycle happening. Okay, let's get to the next slide. Now, we've all just experienced the coronavirus, the health emergency in the world. And for the first time, I think we have a global lockdown. And it is important to see the connection between some of the climate emergency issues and the health emergency issue. And let's just look at the fact that when we look at total primary forest cover, we are looking at a situation where we are losing almost a football pitch every 6 seconds in this world, deforested. And the 3 big rainforests of the world, the Amazon, the Congo, and the Borneo, are losing massive forest cover every second, every 6 seconds. So by the time this conference is, this webinar is over, we would have lost 600 football pitches worth of forest cover. But as you destroy forest cover, that's the habitat of a lot of animals. And now it is increasingly obvious that if you keep destroying forest cover, you're going to have a situation where viruses are going to come to us, mainly because lots of those animals are getting caught up in wet markets all over Asia. So SARS from pigs, bats bringing Ebola, camels with MERS, and then of course bats now with COVID-19. So with this kind of background, it is important for us to understand that if we are going to stop future pandemics and future health emergencies, we need to also address the climate emergency. And the second issue that's contributing to the climate emergency is massive pollution and heating up of the planet as a result of us burning lots and lots of fossil fuels. And the last 20 years have been the hottest 20 years on the planet. So that leads us to our third key element of our strategy, which is renewable energy. So let me move to the last slide. I think we have one before the last slide. Okay, so what I want to share with you is the success we've had since launching the LPTS sustainability strategy in 2017. We've basically made some good ground on those three issues. So starting with water, we now have a rainwater harvesting system that is basically through 58 open field ponds collecting about 40 million liters of rainwater harvested water. We are also increasing the soil carbon levels in terms of enriching the carbon levels of the soil, and we provide potable water to all households within the estate. So water is a major focus in our strategy. The second strategy area is to do with green cover. And we today have committed to maintaining at least 5% of the estate land as watersheds and a 15% as catchment areas. We have also begun to increase our green cover and reduce chemical fertilizer and weedicides in the operations. Another interesting initiative we've taken is in terms of bamboo plantations, Bima bamboo, to replace the firewood. And this is a key project because firewood means we'll be deforesting. Last but not least, renewable energy. Today, we have 17 solar power roof systems in the plantations, generating about 2.5 megawatts of capacity, delivering about 3.5 gigawatts in terms of annual power generation. We have 3 hydro plants doing about 4.5 gigawatts of annual generation. And what is interesting to also realize is that we've been able to generate versus a 3.8 gigawatt consumption in the company, 4.6 gigawatts, which is 22% above our requirement. And I'm quite confident to say that there isn't one plantation company in Sri Lanka which has been able to do that. So in terms of sustainable energy production, we are pretty much on the right track. We've also been able to earn 62.6 million rupees against a total electricity bill of 57.9 million. So these are the 3 key elements, and that is why we have decided to talk to you about these issues. And I hope this presentation that we are going to have from our experts will inspire the rest of Aitken Spence and its various companies to look at aggressive sustainability strategies which reduce costs and also bring money into the company, and of course helps us with the output. So let's get to the last slide. A famous Red Indian chief once said, only when the last tree has died, or should we say been deforested or cut, and the last river has been poisoned, and the last fish has been caught, will we realize we cannot eat money. And it is amazing that with such an obvious, simple fact that we have deforested almost 70% of the world's forests and continue to do so. And Brazil is a country that is pretty much doing so with a gay abandon, and that is really going to be a crisis. The last thought I want to leave with all of you is that the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. National leaders, business leaders, and operational managers, if we think somebody else is going to do that for us, then we are on the wrong track. Each of us have to do what we can to make our businesses more sustainable. Thank you very much, and I hope all of you are inspired to look at sustainability strategies for each of our various businesses in the company. Yasangi?
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Fernando. Indeed, we will only understand the worth of water and biodiversity once we no longer have it. I hope we don't leave it till that. Whenever I discuss water security, so many people tell me, Sri Lanka has enough water, we don't need to worry. Clearly, they are not aware that many districts in Sri Lanka are facing severe water shortages. And because districts like Colombo are commercial capitals, the water demand of Colombo needs to be fulfilled before water can be supplied to other districts. I don't know how many people are aware of that. The water that we have is a privilege, and the more we misuse it, the more we are depriving someone else of having access to fresh water. And the disparity that we see in access to water can aggravate the struggle to protect biodiversity as well. Do we really have enough water in Sri Lanka as people believe? And have we done enough? To discuss the current situation in Sri Lanka and to give us more information about this situation, we have with us Mr. Firsan Hashim. Mr. Hashim is the Chief Operating Officer of the Asia Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management International and the Country Director for Asia Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management Sri Lanka. APAD for short is an international platform for private sector and civil society partnership in disaster mitigation and response. Over the last several years, we have got to know Mr. Hashim and his team quite well through their work to establish partnerships between public and private sectors to strengthen our resilience to disasters. So without further ado, let me hand over control to Mr. Hashim to talk to us about the current situation in Sri Lanka.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Yasangi. As Yasangi said, just to reiterate what she said, with regards to the climatic zones in Sri Lanka, the notion is that when it rains in Colombo, we are all comfortable saying that it's raining all over the country, but it is not so. As you see, 80% of our land is a dry zone, and there is intermittent rain or sometimes no rain at all. Next slide, please. Yes. If you see the statistics in 2017 and 2018, though we had rain in 2017, there was a huge part of our country which was in aridity leading to drought. And this is where the government had to spend more than 15 billion. And in fact, the official amount is nearly 20 billion rupees for these few months that they had to provide compensation to the farmers who had not had their harvest on time. So that's the amount of money that we spend as recurrent expenditure on maybe sometimes annually, and also it might continue right throughout given the circumstances. Next slide, please. A case study that we had again in 2018 was in Pothuwil. One of the hotels had to actually came close to closing down because there was no access to water. And this is the circumstances in which the villages around, their livelihood was dependent on this the hotel itself. But when it came to drought and when there was no water meaning no water for drinking water as well as the day-to-day requirements, they were transporting water from another district, and when it came to the hotels, the people around the hotel actually demonstrated, protested, and then they did not allow the water to go in. And their notion was saying that why would you want to give the foreigners water and not us? And it came very close to closing that hotel, and where we intervened with the government and provided the water both to the villages and the hotels. So this is where we need to be aware how much businesses can be affected due to lack of water. Next slide. The 2050 prediction, as you see, would be much worse as it is. The areas which get water, or the wet zones, will get wetter, and the dry zones will get much drier, and that would cause even more shortage of water in certain areas, and also there will be more water in certain areas which will cause more and more disasters if the water is not managed properly. In terms of managing water, next slide please. Sri Lanka does get sufficient water, but are we managing it properly? As we discussed earlier, it is not distributed equally, but it is also to say that in most of these areas there are economic as well as socio issues related to the lack of water. Especially in the dry zone, we would see that many social impacts of this, where children don't go to school, women get affected, where they have to go and collect water, and so on. So if you see the rainfall data, though we have sufficient water in comparison to some countries, there is an inequity of distribution of this water, and this is where we need to see how the water management can be done actually in a very sufficient way where everybody will have access to water. And if you look at the water related to pipe-borne water, we have 47.7% only, and that again is related to the urban areas. And in areas where there is no water, sometimes you would see the water, the tap water is available only for an hour or two for the 3 days or 2 days. That's how bad it is. And if you see now in Colombo, we would see how much of wastage there is due to pipe-borne water. Next slide, please. 2016, 2017, we had so much of rain. And that rain again was the amount of rain which fell during a short term, 600 millimeters in one instances, and that was too much to handle. Then how best can we manage this water? And if you look at the availability of catchment areas, the reservoirs, the tanks, how can we make use of this water? And this is the water which is used to recharge and provide the well water where you will extract from the ground as well. How are we related to managing water? And look at the statistics regarding the 2016 disaster. 90% of the loss was to the private sector, not the government sector, related to the water issues and the flooding and so on. And the government again came up with the area where they could the recover needs totaled to more than 257 billion, and these are all areas that needs to be taken into account with regards to development. Lastly, next slide, please. What are the recommendations? These are a few recommendations that we could provide. But one of the things that you all are already doing with regards to the initiatives that you all have taken, it is very positive initiatives, but the water audits, these are areas that could be taken into account. And also with regards to go low flow. I mean, as we know, everywhere now we see taps with regards to washing the hands and so on. How much of water are we wasting there? In some countries, it is not with regards only to the water that they charge, but they also charge with regards to the wastewater. How much of wastewater goes away from that home, and they charge with regards to that. So these are a few recommendations that can be taken forward, and we could certainly discuss in the questions and answers and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hashim. That is indeed a very strong message. We must go blue to go green. And some important points for us to maintain both at our operations and at our households as well. Because us being aware of the statistics, we do understand the importance. But sometimes when we share these numbers with others in the group or others that we meet in our day-to-day lives, sometimes what we hear is that can't be true. So let's hope that there is some level of awareness that happens in the wider audience where people will understand the importance of protecting water and protecting our biodiversity as well. We now move on to an interesting session on rainwater harvesting, and we have with us an expert on this topic, Dr. Tanuja Arya. Dr. Aryananda is the Chief Executive Officer and Director of Lanka Rainwater Harvesting Forum, which is a non-government, no-profit organization working to promote rainwater harvesting for domestic use in Sri Lanka. A hydrobiologist by profession, Dr. Aryananda has authored several books and has published more than 25 research papers on rainwater harvesting. Please welcome Dr. Tanuja Aryananda to tell us more about the importance of harvesting rainwater.
Thank you, Asangi, and hello to and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about rainwater harvesting in almost a rainy day. Let's see. So, water is essential for life. Water is life, as Dr. Ravi Fernando just told us. But water does also brings up problems. As just now Mr. Hashim just said about drought and floods, which we face every year since of late. Addition to these droughts and floods, we also have water quality issues. in some parts of the island where they believe due to the bad quality water, people drinking bad quality water, it is causing disease like kidney issues in the North Central province initially. Now about 70,000 people affected, and now moving to the Uva province and also in the southern province. This is a issue which has been coming up in the last last decade or so, I think, and increasing. I mean, we are concerned more about the COVID virus issues, but these people who has very low quality water is facing this issue even now. So this is another issue we have to face and we have to deal with. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, Sri Lanka is rich in rainwater. We have, as we just talked about, we have about 2,000 average annual rainfall, which range from about 900 millimeters in the dry zone to about 5,500 millimeters in the dry zone. Additionally, we have two monsoons by what you call bimodal rainfall. Sometimes the monsoon doesn't come as it is predicted, but we do have two monsoons. So on total average, we receive about 120 billion cubic meters annually water through rain. Rainwater is the only source of water we receive to our island. We don't get snow caps, mountain dissolving or anything like that. It's only we have to rely on the rainfall we get for everything. Agriculture, water, drinking, industry, everything we have to rely on this 120 billion cubic meters of water which we get every year. Of course, most of it we can't use, but about 28.1 billion cubic meters can be used out of this, of which 65% gets discharged into the sea. So this is a lot of water being basis, and I'm sure all of us, when I say this, remember the great Parakram Bahu's statement, let not a drop of water goes to the sea without being used. As Mr. Hashim just brought forward, also we are faced with climate change. Not only us, the whole world is faced with climate change, including Sri Lanka. The rainfall pattern is disturbed. We are predicted to get high intense rainfall for a short time and no rain for a long time. So causing drought, causing floods and drought in the island. Next slide, please. So answer is collecting the rainfall, when it's fall, where it fall, and using during the dry season. So there are two ways you can collect this rainfall. One is actually to, when it's rain, store it in a vessel, as you see in this picture, in a container, tank. This is actually collecting from a roof. You can also collect from the surface runoff. You keep it in a container. It can be a close-up container or open container, like we have the great Wavers we have. Those are open containers which is collecting the rainfall from ancient days. Or you can use it to recharge the groundwater itself. So you send it to the ground and store it in the ground. You enhance this, increase the water retention in the soil, or you directly send it to the groundwater table. So these are two ways of collecting rainwater. That's the basic concept. Next slide, please. So solution, rainwater solution for achieving the SDG goals for water and sanitation. We were told just now, Mr. Hasim brought it forward, that only 47% of the population has pipe water systems in our country, and that is also mostly in the urban areas. So others has to rely on either groundwater or surface water, which is not reliable often. If there's a drought or even floods, those are not accessible or not available. So for places like that, is the answer is to collect at the place where we are staying and use it during those seasons. To adapt for climate change, which we are facing drought and floods, we collect during the rainy season, which will also reduce the flood situation as well. If you collect some of the water which is coming down as rain and not let it go into the streets or ground, I mean around surrounding areas, we can reduce the flooding level as well. And then we can, when the drought comes, we can use it during the droughts. In places where the drinking water is contaminated or groundwater is contamination, rainwater is pure as anything. I mean, that is the purest form of water you can get. So you can drink it, you can use those water for drinking purposes. And as I just earlier said, you can use the rainwater to recharge the groundwater and reduce the surface runoff. By doing this, you increases the groundwater quality as well as the groundwater quantity. So both those things, and you also, by creating these spaces with retaining rainwater, like you Mr. Ravi Fernando, Dr. Ravi Fernando earlier explained, the ponds that was created by the Alpitia plantation, those are places where biodiversity can thrive on. Fish, insects, all those come into these places, and you can increase the biodiversity that way as well. Then in urban areas where you have to spend for water, you get at the end of each month you have a water bill. If you are a high user, you pay more. If you are a lower user, you pay less, because government is subsidizing the lower users. You can reduce this expenditure on water by supplementing your source with rainwater, and then you will be charged a lower amount. Additionally, for bringing this water to our home, the government, spend a lot of money, lot of energy to bring from hundreds or at least 50-60 kilometers from away, so which needs energy to pump water, and also it needs treatment, also which uses energy. So you can reduce energy, that expenditure on energy, by collecting your own rainwater in your own premises. And the last point is, as I just said, you can control floods, especially in the urban areas. If each household has, or each building has a rainwater harvesting tank, you can, what is coming off your roof, you can collect as it is a proportion of it, and only the balance will go into your streets or roads, reducing the floods levels in those areas. So those are my main points. Remember, just a last point, remember rain is water. So nothing different. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tanuja. It's quite insightful to see what a lot we can actually do and how little action can actually help in so many different ways. In Dr. Ravi Fernando's presentation, he mentioned a very poignant message in his presentation. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Whether it's water or biodiversity, it's easier to say we must save water, but when it comes to actual effort, people often turn to the government. Why isn't the government doing anything? Why are all these corporates not doing anything? What are the corporates doing? But we conveniently forget that as 21 million Sri Lankans joining over 7 billion people in the world, if all of us consciously save 1 liter of water each day, that's 7 billion liters of water saved. That's 7 billion liters of water that we have prevented from going into the oceans. Never underestimate the power of one, because when it comes to saving the planet, individual responsibility is crucial. And who better to talk about individual responsibility than our next speaker, Mr. Ravi De Silva. Mr. Ravi De Silva is no stranger to the Spenconian family. He's a consultant in sustainable development and environment management, and he counts for more than 50 years experience in Sri Lanka and overseas, having worked with over 30 nationalities. He was the project manager of Heritage Kandalama when it was being built and was also the environmental management representative in obtaining the Green Globe 21 standard certification for the Heritage Kandalama Hotel, which was the first hotel in Asia to receive it. Since then, he has directed many more hotels and companies to achieve international benchmarks for sustainability. A keen naturalist and author of the book Birds of Kandalama, please welcome Mr. Ravi De Silva. Mr. De Silva, over to you.
Okay, right. Now you see, water is so important, and you got a very good description from the earlier three speakers as to how much is available, how much is wasted, the effects of climate change, etc., etc., etc. Now each one of us need water, and we use it daily. So the problem today is waste. Now we are a nation of wasters. Not only where water is concerned, but where so many other resources are concerned. We waste food, we waste electricity, we waste all our forest resources, and finally we waste water, which is very, very important for our day-to-day life. Now you can see how much of water is available in this region. I also worked in these West African regions, and bordering the Sahara, in the Sahel, you can see this boy doesn't have water to drink. So how can he think of bathing? That is why he goes and puts his head there when the cow is urinating. Now that's the level. You see, we don't understand how water stress people are going through. Now, for instance, you take the Nura Kalawi, you take the dry zone. Nura Kalawi is the triangle between Nuravava, Kalavava, and Padavir. There are ladies with pots on their heads walking 3 kilometers to get just a pot of water for their families to drink. And you can see how many people are dying of unidentified kidney diseases. All this is a result of not waste, but pollution. So another cause is pollution. Whatever source we have, we pollute. And whatever we have, we waste. So therefore, there has to be a behavioral change, an attitudinal change in the use of water, which we must all realize is one of the most important components for life. The next one, please. This all depends on everyone's lifestyle. Each one's lifestyle, we have to make a change. Definitely, the time has come. The next. No, it's not here. All right. Yes. So we have to take a very serious decision as to what changes we have to make in our lifestyles. For what? To save the water and make maximum use of the water we have. Now, this is ancient Sri Lankan wisdom, which I managed to get into the Discovery Channel Lonely Planet program. As ancient Sri Lankan wisdom, 1500 years old. So this is not something new. The use of water, water management for agriculture, as well as domestic use, has been known to Sri Lankans for quite some time. And then I am surprised to see why people waste so much of water and pollute the sources. Now, for instance, there are 103 river systems in Sri Lanka. And I have bathed in 83 of them. Today, I can't bathe in any one of them. Why? Because we have polluted. Who are we? All of us. Now, when I used to When we were building the Kandalama hotel, I used to bathe in the Kandalama tank. Now some people come to bathe, they bathe, and then they put their tractor also and bathe the tractor in the same water. So this is basic knowledge which is necessary from school days. It has to start from home and from school. Now Dr. Fernando and I did some work with some schools, and those children have now realized, and is very happy to see that they've completely got absorbed into it and reduced their consumption of water by 30%, 50%. You can see how much of water goes waste in all institutions and even in industries and even in agriculture. So much surplus water just flowing through and not making a, now see Parakram Bahu said make use of every drop, and we are not making every drop. We are wasting millions and millions of liters of water every day in Sri Lanka in many places and many situations. Next please. So this is since this is ancient knowledge which we have acquired, it should be in our genes, and it is nothing new to make a change in your lifestyle. Now see, we fix these things called bib taps, which are screw taps, and you just open it and use it and you don't close it properly, or sometimes the washer gets wasted and water drips out. I mean, this is a very simple thing. I'm talking at every drop of water per second is 32,356 liters per annum, about 7.5 Bowser loads of water. You don't, when you don't turn the tap properly, you don't realize what a damage you're doing. Now, just as Yasanji said, 21 million people. So now we have to always make sure that we repair our leaks. And then we must make sure that we use green fixtures like push taps. Taps operated with the elbow, taps operated with the foot, or photosensitive taps, which opens and releases water only when you put your hand inside under the tap. You see, so therefore we have introduced. At Itkinspence we introduced it some time back, and now it is in good practice. It's what is called a closing tap policy. If somebody sees a tap dripping, you immediately close it. You are not bothered as to who opened it or who closed it. So if everybody follows this policy of closing tap, you either close it, and if it doesn't close, you have to report to wherever it is necessary and get the leaks repaired, because every drop counts. Now the next situation is, other than wastage, if you work out what we treat as a national water supply board, what they treat and chlorinate and pump and supply to almost, I think, about 47 or 40 to 50% of the population of Sri Lanka. 50% of that quantity of water is wasted. It leaks through. Just imagine how we can easily control this if we are conscious of these little small things that we do. Now, and the next situation is the pollution factor. So if you don't concentrate on saving the water that goes waste, which we call wastewater, there's nothing called wastewater. You can easily recycle, and all industries, many industries in Sri Lanka are doing it now. And then make sure that you don't pollute. Now, how does this pollution occur? You don't get rid of your waste in the proper way. Now see, you take Sri Lanka is now almost number 5 in the world with disposal of plastics into streams, and finally it ends up in streams and rivers, and sorry, the early one. It ends up in the ocean. You can see there are the water currents have been turning and twisting and turning and twisting, and finally there are these things which we call Gayas, which are big islands of polythene and plastic, which is about, each one of these is about 3 times the size of Sri Lanka. You just imagine the pollution. Very soon we'll have more microplastics in the ocean than fish, all created on land, not by people like you and I. So we have to make sure that we reduce the use of plastics. and make sure that this doesn't happen. Next one, please. Sorry. Use of plastic can be easily avoided, and if it is used, then there is a you can consider waste as a resource. You can separate it and make use of the resource. You can compost the degradables and you can recycle, reuse, and apply the 7R principle. We'll get onto that later. If you don't separate waste, it turns into what is called garbage. Garbage is man-made. All this we are talking about biodiversity because this pollutes the water that you use. So it has a chain reaction. If you don't dispose of your waste properly, then you are affecting the biodiversity. Then, as the earlier speakers said, we are going to affect the water supplies, the sources that we have. And if we pollute the sources, we are gone. Right. So we have introduced the 7R principle here in that Aitken Spence and many other places. You see, if you where do you apply 7R? Where you apply 7R when there's waste generated, and everywhere waste is generated. Every input has a output and also a waste percentage, can be big or small. So if you treat it properly and dispose of it, waste turns into a resource. If you do not treat, it becomes garbage and it ends up polluting the whole place, including the water sources that you have. So you go for what is called the zero dumping attitude, the zero dumping lifestyle. These are individual responsibility. Every individual, every person has to follow these lines, and it was followed. We didn't damage the hills. We cultivated the dry zone. We exported rice. This is a tradition for the 1,500 years. I don't know why we can't do the same thing now. It's very easy. Yes. I think we have come to the end, is it? Last one. Okay. So we are something that we have to comment on the biodiversity is we have what is called wildlife. Wildlife is wildlife. So you don't feed wildlife. When you feed wildlife, whether it's elephants, monkeys, it's at Sigiriya, Dambulla, Udawalave, what do? It's a disaster. We are creating elephant beggars. We are creating monkey beggars. You see, and then they are so dependent on us. You go the 18 the hairpin bends, they ask for food. Why? Because people have completely spoiled them. We have completely affected the biodiversity by unnecessary interference. You can easily observe and enjoy wildlife if you don't feed them. Wildlife must be left as wildlife and not as beggars, dependent on crazy human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rave de Silva. Indeed, a very important point that you bring in as well, that we must follow our own guidelines and follow our own disciplines when we enter spaces that belong to wildlife and not turn wildlife into beggars. Very important point that you bring as well. And with that, we end the formal part of this webinar. We will now move on to the question and answer section of this webinar. And we have the first question from Sanjeev Dabare. And he asks, our tanks cannot withhold greater capacity of water due to accumulated mud sludge. Why can't we educate the governments and encourage to implement a national policy to maintain the tanks? So I will repeat that question. Our tanks cannot withhold greater capacity of water due to accumulated mud sludge. Why can't we educate the governments and encourage to implement a national policy to maintain the tanks? I think Dr. Thanuja, do you think you might be able to answer that?
Well, maintaining the tanks actually, in ancient days, it was done by the villagers themselves. So I don't know if there's a national policy, but there are, of course, the government is actually desilting some of the tanks. There's a big couple of last few years or last 10 years or so they've been doing that. one of the things you can to reduce this sedimentation or silting of the tanks is actually have some silt traps before it gets to the tanks or the ponds. So that will reduce the impact on uh, the ponds or the tanks. So I'm not aware about national policy. Maybe something we can push, but then it depends on who's going to take the responsibility to actually do it. So I would think it's your own. If it's in your own premises, then you will have to do it yourself. If it's in a village, the villagers themselves has to do it, because if you go back to the government to do it, I think it is another burden on the government, I feel. I don't know if the others has anything to say.
Mr. Hashim, might you have any insights on this?
Yes. What happens also is that desilting or dredging is very scientific too, because if you look at the 14,000 odd small tanks that which are available, and we have been speaking to the agrarian department too on this, it needs not only a dredging and to have more capacity, but it also needs to be strengthened, because what they say is that if you don't strengthen the small tanks, the cascading effect, because all these are in the form of cascading effect tanks, there could be more water, and then it could damage, and then it could damage the tanks which are in the which follow. So this is this has to be done as the questioner said. Can we not have a national policy? We should have one. And then also it has been divided into different departments. If you take the Mahavali department, they would have their separate reservoirs. Then if you take the irrigation department, they have 85 plus tanks. And then you would have the 14,000 minor tanks with the agrarian department. So they need to come together. And also it also has to be supported, as you said earlier, Yasangi, not only by the government, but all of us have to get together and work towards that.
Thank you, Dr. Tanoja and Mr. Farzan Hashim. We have another question to Mr. Ravi De Silva. What is the way forward that you see in terms of sustainability at Aitken Spence?
The way forward, obviously, is that everybody must understand that we must sustain life. And to sustain life, we have to sustain our employment. And to sustain our employment, we have to sustain the companies and the corporates and the organizations that provide us the employment. So the companies, now you saw a good example, Dr. Fernando was emphasizing on the sustainability policies of plantations. Similarly, all corporates must make sustainability a top business priority. In all their planning and in all their functions, sustainability must be number one. Now, because business has to be sustained, for the employment to be sustained, for you to sustain life. So it must start. Policy alone is not enough. You must have a policy and you must activate the policy. Now, many people talk of many things, but you see, it's a action that matters. So what we lack is that. What we lack is in Sinhala we say Kaivaru Nautala Keruva Bahinde. So Keruva is what we need. You see, we have so many people who come out with very good theories, very nice, very good researchers, universities, all have. But then when it comes to the implementation stage, you see, we lack. So the sustainability policy should be there, and we must activate that. And it must start from government and corporates, who are the two big employers for each individual to get their own income to sustain life. So Sustainability is very important. Make it a top priority, not only at corporates, even in your own homes. Make sure that you reduce waste. Now, I started by saying that we are a nation of wasters. I can prove it. Anybody can prove it. So wasting is not sustaining. It's just the opposite of sustaining. So we have to make sure that we don't waste, but sustain.
I think we have one more question. This question is directed to Dr. Ravi Fernando. With COVID-19, will water and biodiversity become a priority for corporates? Dr. Ravi Fernando, your thoughts on this?
I think water will always be a priority for not just corporates, for every one of us. The difference in terms of COVID-19 is because hygiene is increasingly stressed upon. We need to obviously, we are using a lot more water than probably we used to before. So the fact that it is a priority, I don't think will ever change. It will probably a bigger priority than before. But I think the key point that has to be made here is that unless we also conserve the forest covers of that come under our purview, we are not contributing to the protection of the water and looking after that whole resource. I also want to make a point, Yasangi, about sustainability strategy in the company. So I think lots of companies do bits and bobs of sustainability, bits and bobs of CSR items. And I think even within the group, I have noticed lots of CSR projects and items are happening. But increasingly, the focus today is embedding sustainability in the corporate strategy and building a business model that is sustainable. And frankly, that is much more important to do than simply having a CSR project. It's no point if 90% of our business is unsustainable and doing things which are unsustainable, and then having a flagship CSR project to do things. So the future of sustainability, I believe, for every one of our group companies and for all corporates in Sri Lanka is to avoid this CSR focus and to move into embedding sustainability in corporate strategy, mainstreaming it, and having it as a business model, as LPTA Plantations have done very, very well. And that is why today we are among the top 2 most profitable plantations in the country. And I believe in the years to come, we will clearly be the most sustainable plantation, not just in Sri Lanka, probably almost anywhere. So those are the 2 key points I want to make.
Dr. Ravi Fernando, there's another question that kind of borders on the same question. How can sustainability ensure that you will have business sense in many cases? If you would like to elaborate a little bit on the business case of sustainability?
Okay, so the best way to elaborate that is to look at what are the big corporates in the world who have embedded sustainability in their corporate strategies and are succeeding. To me, that's the best business case. So let's start with the big 4 companies of the world in terms of market capitalization, starting with the Apples, the Microsofts, the Amazons, and the Googles. I don't know how many of you are aware that every one of these 4 companies have gone into 100% renewable energy. Now that is embedding sustainability in corporate strategy. Similarly, with the entire Tesla operations, every one of their businesses, IKEA is also doing the same. So the reason that people think that sustainability is not some part of the business strategy is because for a long time, lots of leaders of business thought that sustainability is okay if you do a CSR project. So this is not what we are talking about. And all these companies I mentioned to you are succeeding dramatically in the marketplace because they have embedded sustainability in corporate strategy. So business strategy and corporate strategy and sustainability strategy shouldn't be three different things. It should be just one thing. All three of these things have to be embedded in one simple corporate strategy. And at LPTF, that is exactly what we have done. We don't see sustainability as a nice to do CSR project that hopefully gets us an award. We do it because by sustainability strategy, we are reducing our costs, we are reducing our negative impact on the planet, and we are also increasing our yields, increasing our profitability. So to me, sustainability and corporate strategy are intertwined, and every one of us needs to really get sharp on understanding how to do that. And each of our different businesses, of course, for plantations, I think we have selected the right sustainability strategy. I'm sure the sustainability strategy and corporate strategy will be different for the various businesses that we have. But the important point is business is strategy and sustainability strategy are not two things, it's one thing.
Absolutely. And on that, we have another question, which I think I would direct to Mr. Faizan Hashim. Because of your experience working with different corporates and understanding different corporate cultures and the kind of priorities that different corporates have set forth as well. The question is on corporate culture in many different organizations and how that might drive sustainability aspects, which are having a longer financial payback in most cases, as it may be an investment decision at last. Mr. Hashim, working with corporates and talking to them about DRR and BCP plans, how do you think corporate culture plays into investment decisions to invest towards sustainability? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, in fact, it's a very good question. Some of the corporates, what we have seen over the years, has learned it the hard way, where they have lost billions of rupees, and bouncing back has been very difficult in that sense. But what we need to look at is, what is your BCP? Now, like Dr. Fernando did speak about sustainability. What would happen if there is no water? What would happen if there is no electricity to pump the water up? What is your BCP with regards to that? How have you integrated sustainability into your BCP? Have you done that? So the corporate culture, if you look at the corporate culture in the industrial districts, whether it is Gampaha or in Colombo, we are all urbanized or peri-urban areas. In those areas, we all depend, our dependency is mostly on pipe-borne water. And we don't think twice when we open the tap. And there is enough water. If not, we will just call the guy who is dealing with sustainability and ensuring that they provide water through a bowser. But then can we continue this? Can there be sustainability under these circumstances? We are going to face a water shortage. We have seen in the other districts that there is water war in between two divisions where they say so that they cannot support from one division to another division. So as I told you earlier, a case study that we did with regards to a hotel, they just want, because it's not only about the water, but it is about life, because there was life threat to the people who were working there and the foreigners who didn't want to come back. So this is with regards to how we can better manage water, how we can incorporate this into sustainability into the BCPs. BCP is actually sustainability. Have we incorporated that? Then we also must look at the tendency of ensuring how do we work with our partners. If it is wholesale, the retailers, are they taking care of the water? How are they sustaining? Then also, how can you influence the CSR programs, as was mentioned earlier, to be more sustainable? To turn towards sustainability. Now, most of us go and do corporate culture is to go and do something CSR in the next school or joining school or the villages around. But are we not taking this message down to them? Why can't we make it a sustainable program, a sustainability? So I think this is where we need to change. That is not only corporate. I think that is very, very important to keep in mind. We have to practice this at home with the villagers, with the neighbors, and bring it all to the table, or we are going to face a very serious situation in the future.
Absolutely, Mr. Hashim. I would actually like to direct a question to Dr. Tanuja at this point. People living in urban cities like Colombo, if they are interested in implementing rainwater harvesting systems, what would be your recommendation, a very quick recommendation for people in urban areas who may not have all the space available? What would be your recommendation for them to harvest rainwater? And I think that might be our last question as we need to wrap up. So if I may ask for a quick recommendation.
Yeah, Sanki. Basically, you can collect water coming from your roof. If you don't need to use it for your drinking needs, then you can use it for any other things like gardening. Even for a small place, if you have a small barrel and connect your roof water through your gutters into through the pipes into a small barrel, and you can use that for home gardening. You can wash your cars with it. If you have a bigger space, you have a bigger tank, and then you can flush your toilets with it. So simply just collecting much as possible and not letting it go to waste would be the answer for urban areas.
Thank you, ma'am. And as the moderator, I'm going to take the liberty of extending it to just one more question. And this question is directed to Dr. Ravi Fernando again, very quickly. Many people will not believe this, but I want your opinion on this, Dr. Ravi Fernando. Our water was here.
I want to very quickly answer that. Today, there are three major conflict zones in the world which are fighting for water. And the first one is for the Himalayan waters between China, India, and Pakistan. And these water wars are real. And when you hear of skirmishes in the Himalayas, they are fighting actually to secure the water. A second water war is emerging in Africa between Ethiopia and Egypt, where Ethiopia is beginning to dam the Nile River, and this is leading to a massive global conflict because the people of Egypt, about 100 million people of Egypt, depend on the water of the Nile. And the third one is in Southeast Asia in terms of the Seven Gorges Dam, which is basically running all the way from China right down to Vietnam and even to that part of the region. So what one must realize is we are now already beginning to fight for water. And this is increasingly going to be the reality. And we have to realize that water is such a precious raw material, a precious resource that is life-giving, but can also be life-threatening if you don't manage it. Thanks, Yasangi.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Fernando. And sadly, that is all the time that we have for today, even though there is much more to discuss. And to give closing remarks, I would like to invite Dr. Rohan Fernando to speak a few words. Dr. Rohan Fernando is the Executive Director of Aitken Spence PLC, Head of Business Development, Sustainability and Plantations of Aitken Spence PLC, who largely spearheaded the sustainability program of the company. So Dr. Rohan Fernando, over to you.
Thank you, Yasangi. I find it a little difficult to put together all what these four very eminent speakers spoke. They're all experts in their own right. And I have had the privilege of working with most of them, except probably Dr. Tanuja. I've only heard a lot about you. But having said that, I like to say a few things. In fact, Yasangi asked that question about the water wars. I think like to remind every one of you of the war that was fought here in our own country at Mahavil Maru, which was over because of water. And so you don't need to go too far about it. So that shows you the importance of water. And going back to sustainability, once again, myself, particularly at Aitken Spence, And LPGA Plantations has had the privilege of working with Mr. Ravi Fernando initially, and then Dr. Ravi Fernando, who has really spearheaded our LPGA sustainability strategy and brought it to what it is today. And before it was Dr. Ravi Fernando, Ravi De Silva, who was one of the architects of setting up Mandalama. And all of us had the good fortune of, getting our experiences from them. I must also thank Mr. Birzan Hazim and his team at APET, who has also guided Aitken Spence largely in our sustainability strategy. Now, I mentioned all this simply because today this clearly shows the importance of sustainability. 10 years ago, sustainability was only a cliche. Everybody liked to say that you are, practicing sustainability, but did not know the difference between sustainability and CSR. Everybody liked to do a project and put it in the newspaper, get somebody to open it, and say that we have spent X amount of money doing some project. But today it's a completely different story, and a company that does not practice sustainability and have it embedded in their corporate strategy, to my mind, as Dr. Ravi Fernando confirmed, it's not worth its salt. He can mention to you some of the bigger names globally, and I can give you some names in Sri Lanka too, who have embedded sustainability into their corporate strategy. And in a concept or a strategy like sustainability, there is no end to what you could do. Water is just one aspect of sustainability, but one of the most important, simply because water is becoming scarce. I don't think any one of you who are in my era ever thought that we will have to pay for water today. Today a bottle of water is more expensive than a cup of tea. So that shows you the value of water, and it's a fast diminishing resource. So unless every one of us as corporate leaders realize the importance of water and use it sparingly, and also harvest whatever water possible, like Dr. Tanuja has shared with us, very soon we won't be talking of COVID virus, but we will be talking of a shortage of water. And at least COVID virus, there are remedies, but I cannot see any remedy if there is a scarcity of water. So it's time that every one of us, particularly who are involved in agriculture and the plantation business, realize the importance of conserving water. And again, we at LPTI is fortunate that we have, under the leadership of Dr. Ravi Fernando, set up a rainwater harvesting strategy. We have set up the water conservation strategies, and also our commercial forestry and several areas that we were already in. Now, all these go hand in hand: water, commercial forestry, and energy, renewable energy. Because unless you plant trees, unless you conserve your trees, unless you ensure that your plantation areas get the effects of shade, your productivity won't be improved. Unless we harvest our rainwater and ensure that there's adequate drainage and there is no wastewater, there is no water wastage, we are all wasting the water that we have. I think Birzan said, in our upcountry areas, if you drive during the rain, you will find water overflowing. But if you go into the areas of NCP, there will be people queuing up with buckets to collect water. That shows the tragedy of an imbalance in water in our own country. So I think one of the speakers said, this has to start from us. We are the culprits. We are also the ones who can give the solution. So we all need to band together. It's not only the corporates, but we need to start from the schools. We need to start from the children. We need to educate those in policy, from the politicians downwards, to ensure that not only is water conserved, not only is there forestry maintained and more trees planted, more trees conserved, and also the area of renewable energy. Today we are promoting solar power in LPG plantations. We are promoting hydropower. But I don't know whether the same policy is enunciated from the government. So this is all a, it's a coordinated strategy that everyone needs to implement. If you are going to implement sustainability as not only as a corporate strategy, but as a strategy that will be driven by the leaders of our nation. Because there is a limit that just individuals can do, but together, what we can do is a united force is enormous. Mr. Ravi De Silva has been talking of sustainability the last 40, 50 years, but there is still a lot more that we can do. So, in conclusion, what I like to say is that webinars of this nature are important, but there is a role that every one of us as individuals can play in contributing to whatever we could. Mr. Ravi De Silva spoke of food waste. In our own lunchroom, we have been trying to maintain food waste, but still there is a lot more we can do. We try to conserve water, but still you can see so much of water wastage if you drive around Colombo. Then we are talking of garbage, which is again contributing to all the pollution that this country has known. So these are some of the comments that I can make. And I must thank all the 4 panelists who have shared their valuable experience with us. But what I like to, in conclusion, say is that all companies, particularly the agriculture related companies, must embed sustainability as a corporate strategy, and that should be driven from the top. It should not be contained in their annual reports or on somebody's table, but should be a part of their normal corporate strategy. We don't have to be like a Cape Town. I think 2 years ago, Cape Town didn't have water. They were measuring water. So, it could happen here. The same thing has happened in India. And God help us if there's no water in this country, particularly in Colombo. So with those very brief remarks, I'd like to thank all the panelists for honoring LPTF Plantations and Aitken Spence with sharing their valuable time this evening with us. We would like to invite them more and more to be involved with both Aitken Spence and LPTF Plantations in using their knowledge and experience in strengthening the sustainability strategies of both LPTF Plantations and Aitken Spence PLC. And a big thank you to Yasangi for moderating this very, I would say, illuminating session. Not easy to capture the essence of 4 top quality experts. So thank you, Yasangi, and thank you, my team at LPTF Plantations, for putting everything together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rahan Fernando. Indeed, a very strong point that you raised of all the poignant points that we have discussed. What will we forget when we log out, and what will we actually remember and take action on? It's very important that we take action without simply limiting to what we heard today to just a webinar and forgetting about it till we hear about it or see it in, let's say, Tartan or any other platform. So what will we change moving forward? What pledge will we take moving forward to cut our own water footprint, to do our own water audits, and to do our part as one of that family of 7 billion on this planet to make sure that we have a better future? That is the question. Thank you once again to all our panelists. Thank you, Dr. Rahan Fernando. Thank you to the LPTF Plantations team for putting this together, and to everyone who worked behind the scenes to make sure that this came into fruition smoothly. And I would also like to thank all our participants today who took their valuable time to be with us. Thank you so much for your attendance. And if you have any further questions, you can send us an email and we will try our best to get back to you with the answers to all your questions. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Asangi. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dr. Manuja.
Thank you.